Hey guys, I'm Dorkk. This is just going to be a video just to show my protection Paladin UI. Just going to show you the different pieces of it, and then just so you know what portions you're importing, basically with what strings. Um, the Trinket group that I have here, it just makes it so it's one aura for each group or for each trinket. It just basically does everything for that trinket specifically. It'll show like a placeholder for when it's like if it's like a proc trinket for when it's not procced. It shows the cooldown for any of the trinkets. It shows obviously the proc and the effects of the trinkets. I put Sephu's Secret in this group just because I liked it. I feel like it made more sense in that group than elsewhere in most of my UIs. Plus, it made it so that if I were using it on multiple characters or anything like that, I don't need to just repeat the aura. It'll just be here instead. Um, I explain this more in a different video, so I'm not really going to go through all the trinkets or anything like that or explaining how they do it. Um, for the most part, if you needed, like obviously this isn't every trinket. If most of them though are the framework for any kind of trinket, so like there's a few different types where some are unused in a shield, some of them are just regular proc, some of them are unused and stuff like that. But you can use pretty much any of these as the framework for whatever trinket you have and are using, where you would just have to duplicate it, then just change some things. But like I said, I explain how to do that in a different video, so I'm not really going to do that here. The SOTR and LOTP group, I have two different types of this actually, and I'll have the strings for both of them. The first one, that they're the same if you're not using Legendary Helm. It's really just for the Legendary Helmet that they have different things for. So like right now, if I'm wearing the Legendary Helm, which I just equipped it, if I cast Light of the Protector, it just tells you how many charges you have as well as the cooldown. But now, if I disable this group and then just enable the other one, so what this one does is instead it gives you two different bars just to show the cooldown separately of each one, in the same way that I have it do that for your Shield of the Righteous. Um, but so it's really like I made it two different kinds because maybe some people have a certain preference of which one they would rather use. I personally just like the single bar and just showing the cooldown on it. Um, so that's the one I'm going to use. And it doesn't, if you decide to use this version where it's the two bars, everything's like it's not going to say SOTR 2 or like Shield of the Righteous 1 cooldown 2 or anything like that. It's going to import correctly where it's going to be just the name. It's not going to add like the 2 at the end of everything, the way it's shown here. That's just because I re-imported it to have both, um, so I could show them both. That's pretty much it for that. That's all that does is just show your charges of everything. And then obviously if you're not using the helmet, so if I go back to not using it, it just shows the number. It doesn't show like 1 dash or 0 dash or anything like that because you only have one charge, so you don't need to see that. In the protection cooldowns group, that's just your like bigger cooldowns of stuff. So just your Lay on Hands, your Guardian, Ardent Defender, your Avenging Wrath, your Bop and Blessing of Spell Warding, and your Divine Shield. The procs group is pretty small. It just has the shield value of your Bulwark of Order. So it just tells you the shield is 671,000. So now if you have it, it'll show you the duration on top and then the strength below. The other thing that is in that group is just it just shows your Seraphim. I didn't really have a group that I liked it being in better. Like I didn't like it down here, and I can't really put it in this group. Otherwise, it's just gonna like overflow past the thing. You can move it easily. If you want it in one of those other groups, it's not that difficult to move, or you can move it on its own. All it does essentially is it just shows you the buff of Seraphim, and then when it's off, it'll just show you the cooldown of Seraphim. That was the best place for me for using it. I don't really use Seraphim that much, honestly. I'm pretty lazy, so I just wind up using Righteous Protector. But if you use Seraphim, you can just move it or use it there or see how you like it. The general CD group is just this bar down here with all just whatever you're using pretty frequently, but not that it needs to be, like your big go-to things essentially. Um, the Divine Steed, I think, is the only one here that can potentially have 2 charges. So like right now, if I cast it, it just shows the cooldown. But if we're using this talent, it's gonna just show you how many stacks you have of it, or how many charges you have of it. So like right now I switched to the talent, so now it shows I have 1. If I cast it again, it goes to 0 again. If I go back to Blessing and Spell Warding, it's going to not show the charges anymore because you only have the 1 charge. And then obviously if you're using Knight Templar, it also shows the lower cooldown. That's pretty much it. And then obviously even if you're using the talent for the 2 charges, like when it is off cooldown, it doesn't show like 2 on it or anything like that. It doesn't show the number of charges if it's completely off cooldown because it's not something you need to see. If you don't see any text on it or anything, you know you have all your charges of it. That's the way I made it. The same thing does happen in this group though, as well with the Blessed Hammer or Hammer of the Righteous. It'll do the same thing where it shows you the stack and then the cooldown, but doesn't show it if it's completely off cooldown. And then the rest is just your normal cooldowns of Consecration, Avenger, Shield, Judgment, and Light of the Protector. Oh, that's actually wrong. Not Light of the Protector, it's Eye of T. I must have had Light of the Protector there at some point, and when I changed it I forgot. Then the last things are just my general stuff that I have on like every character. The active buffs I've made into one giant group essentially that works throughout all my tanks. Just because certain ones I didn't want to have to duplicate, mainly the external buffs and stuff like that. The things like Concordance and then Lust and any of the things that anyone in your group could be casting on you, mainly like healers and stuff, but it actually looks like I'm missing a few, unless they're at the bottom still. Yeah, some of them are at the bottom still right now. I have to move them up though. And then all the different tanks have their specific buffs and stuff like that. So like here for Paladin, if you scroll down to here, you have Shield of the Righteous, you have Divine Seed, you have the Avenging Wrath buff, and you have Ardent and Guardian. I just didn't want to have to, like, I could make this group specifically for each tank, but I didn't want to have to duplicate the Concordance and like any of the buffs that I'm going to be getting on all the tanks essentially. But I only make the other ones load when you're specifically playing that class and that spec that they apply to. And then outside of that, there's just a global cooldown bar. You can put the global cooldown sweep on weak auras now pretty easily. You could have done it before, but with more custom code involved. Now you can do it with just a normal option when you go to like if we go to Avenger Shield, you can just choose to show global cooldown. I still use just the global cooldown bar, I just like it better. And then Mark of the Heavy Hide is just neck enchant for tanks, or most tanks. I guess you could be using the other enchants, but I just use Heavy Hide. That's pretty much it for that though. And then obviously for my UI, I'm using Elvui. My buffs I don't really show down here. I still just let them, any buffs I pretty much have up here in the top where they normally are, or if they're specifically things like those like externals and stuff like that, or very frequently used like buffs of that specific class, then I have that in the active buffs group on the weak auras. For debuffs though, I have those shown right here, which do fall in line. They're right above the active buffs group. And then for your target, I have it So this side is the debuffs on the target, any debuffs you're applying and whatever, and then it'll show the buffs on the opposite side. This limits it obviously to 8 buffs of each, but rarely are you applying 8 debuffs of your own debuffs to the target, and I think other than maybe PvP, they're probably not having 8 buffs as well. Obviously this is a PvE oriented UI. To import these weak auras, I'm going to have a link to this Google Doc in the description, and I've just started trying to put all my weak auras into this Google Doc instead of how I pretty much just gave separate links to the pastebin in the description in previous videos. Just because it's easier for you to both see which one you're importing, and then it's also easier for me because I can just click the edit button to change the strings for these. So all these will just link you to the pastebins that correspond with that group, and then you can just get the string from there. And then obviously I still have the 2 different Shield of the Righteous groups down here that the only difference between them is if you're using the legendary helmet. If you're not, they're going to look the same. So all you have to do is just click on one of the links, it'll bring you to that pastebin. You just copy this string, and then when you go into World of Warcraft and you open weak auras, you just have to click import, and then you just put that string in there. Most of the groups are probably going to tell you this aura contains custom Lua code. Make sure you can trust the person who sent it. If you click show code, you can actually look at it, so you can double check I'm not doing anything sketchy. Really the only code in them is just for the spell charges to see it's the code that I need in order to show it. So when something has multiple charges, it shows the charges but then doesn't show something if it's completely off a cooldown. That's pretty much most, if not all, the custom code that's going to be in these auras. In the Google Doc, in the general auras is where you'll find the global cooldown bar, the active buffs bar or group, the Mark of the Heavy Hide, and any of the trinkets. So if you're looking for those, they're not going to be in the individual class auras, but they're going to be just at the top of the page with the general auras. That's going to be it for the Paladin auras. I'm going to be trying to keep putting up what tanks I have and what other specs I've made so far. So like right now in the Google Doc, you can see actually that I already have the Warrior, Druid, Death Knight, and Paladin up. I don't have a video for Druid or Death Knight, I believe, but I do have the auras posted. And then I already do have the auras made for Monk and Demon Hunter, but I just need to clean them up and just improve them a little bit before I post them. I have all 3 Hunter specs made from what I remember. I just still also need to clean those up. And then for Warrior, I have Fury Warrior pretty much made, and then Feral Druid is pretty made. Everything just needs to be cleaned up before I want to post them. I hope these auras helped, and I hope you like them. If you need the other things I just listed, they should be up hopefully sometime soon, but I don't know for sure. Thanks for watching, and hope you like them.